Hi everyone, I'm Oleg.
And I'm Maria, and together we're Z9 Works. We help small and medium businesses make smarter technology decisions. Welcome to the channel.
Last week we were doing an assessment for a pretty large company, and we were sitting in one of the meetings, initial meetings, with the room full of executives. And one of the first questions we usually ask is, how can we understand your processes? Do you have any documentation? Can somebody help us get us going? And as soon as Maria asked that question, the whole room went silent. Everybody looked at each other and looked at the empty seat at the table. When we asked, what is going on, one of the executives, a little bit nervously, said, well, the only person or the best person who can tell you is Bob, and Bob is on vacation this week. Awesome. So when is Bob back? Oh, he is gone for a couple more weeks after this. And that got us thinking, because this is clearly not the only organization that has this kind of problem. And we see this quite frequently, where a lot of knowledge is revolving or residing
yes, in one person, right? And it really got us thinking about our first episode and what would be a good topic to talk about. We've all seen the companies with Bob, but why do we think it's important, right? So that we talk about this and what can go wrong if you have Bob in your organization, and then how we can fix it together.
Well, let's maybe start with, why is this even important? Why should anybody care about that?
Well, I think your story was a great example because for that particular project and assessment, we couldn't start anything. We had to wait for those 2 weeks for Bob to come back from vacation. So nothing got done while Bob was away.
So essentially, the company was burning money, waiting on one person to come back um, to provide us with the knowledge. And it's not only the money in terms of resources waiting on it, but it's also, obviously, we couldn't deliver the results for extra 2-3 weeks because um, this person was not available. So it, it all revolves around availability, and it all revolves around what's the cost of having that kind of person in the organization.
Yes, because vacations are one thing, but then things happen, life happens. You cannot be dependent, you as the organization, you cannot be dependent on a person on that, you know, we don't put all eggs in the same basket, do we?
Sometimes we do.
I guess unintentionally, right?
Unintentionally.
And maybe that's a good segue to figure out how does that happen, right? What can lead to these situations, and maybe
Well,
get to the bottom of it.
in a lot of cases, I think what happens is the companies grow organically, and they all start as small organization, maybe with few people in it, and the focus is more on getting things done rather than doing them properly or documenting things along the way.
Oh,
The
that
D word.
bad word, the D word comes into play. Yes, documentation. We'll definitely talk about that.
It is. It's all this organic growth, starting small and growing bigger, where you're so much where we see a lot of owners focusing on the growth itself, on battling fires.
Yeah.
We see this every single week, where there is something happens and you just need to figure out a solution. So when the owners do that, or they're pushing their team to get the results, there's really no time to figure out what's the best way to prevent the situations like this.
Yeah, you just really need to focus on your business and, as you said, how to get things done, right? And usually there is a person that is there because he or she is very helpful to your business. Let's call them Bob. I
Yeah.
think that's a great name. Let's stick with Bob, right? That can step up and say, "I'll get this done. I'll figure this out," and he does. And it's wonderful for when your business is growing because you know that you can trust people. Or,
Absolutely.
yeah, sometimes it's you yourself, right, that needs to figure things out. You become Bob, but we've seen that as
We've
well.
seen owners become Bob, absolutely. And it's almost like it's a hero culture where this person, this employee, enjoys being a hero, enjoys being somebody who can solve the problems. Um, but then on the opposite side, the organization also enjoys having one-stop shop for all issues or all inquiries to be resolved. It's almost like, two sides of the same coin. Companies realize the problem, and but it's very hard to get out of that circle of um, you know putting more and more and more knowledge into exactly the same spot.
Absolutely. And quite often, those people, Bobs out there, um, yeah, sometimes there is a hero culture, but sometimes they also feel like they're hostages of the situation as well. They feel like there's no way out. In this particular example, with which we started, when Bob did come back from vacation, he was very upset that we had to wait a few weeks for him to tell us something because I was like, oh, it's always me. It's very hard for me to find time for my time off and to spend time with the family because he felt very obligated to the company to make sure that he's there to keep things running. And that's not healthy either.
Well, not only that, we were one of the many, many people that were in the queue waiting for his return.
Absolutely. Yes.
What do you think about the um, because this hero culture or hero problem sometimes overlaps with familiarity with the specific tools. So Bob can be really good in Excel, and everybody comes to him to get it done. And he is just everything is being done within specific um, or with the Excel sheets. And
Could be Excel, could be other things, but yes, usually as organizations grow organically, they grow their tool set organically as well. Excel could be one of them. That magic wheel, seeing the magic spreadsheets with multiple tabs, multiple formulas. Please don't touch it. Please don't blow on it because it may just collapse accidentally. Um, yeah, and it's whatever tools people are familiar with, can be Excel, can be something else, Google Sheets, other things, but those are the things that get things done, that help the organizations make sense of the information that they have, make sense of the decisions that they need to make. It really can be anything
so Bob mixed with the software that he knows
and feels
uh,
comfortable in.
and he's
Yeah,
comfortable with is a quite dangerous situation.
for everybody, including Bob. Yes, absolutely.
Remember, we had a company where the whole they built a huge ERP system with ordering, finance, purchasing with Excel. There
Yeah,
were 16 workbooks with the multitude of worksheets in each one of them, and they all would relate to each other, and
yes.
they all would be stored on the same server, and only a specific person would be allowed to touch it. And how dangerous is that?
Very dangerous because you are running the risk of a formula breaking or a reference to another spreadsheet or a tab breaking. And nobody knows when the formulas are working on where the formulas are not working in that spreadsheet because sometimes something breaks and it's not necessarily as visible as a broken link or a missing formula. And that can generate errors for a very long time.
We had a customer maybe 6 months ago when we were talking about something similar, and we've asked the owner. There was owner and CFO sitting in the room, and we asked him, why do you always go to Bob to get the answers? And the answer was because he will be the only one who will get this done.
Who will get
Um,
this right? Yes.
exactly. So we had a meeting, and I remember this very clearly. We had a meeting the next day with employees, and Bob was part of it. So we turned to him and we said, "Why do they all come to you?" And his answer was, "Because if I don't do it, it won't be done properly."
Yeah.
It was the same answer, two different rooms, two different set of coffee mugs, but the answer was exactly the same. And that resonated so much with us, or with me,
Oh,
because
for sure.
it's that culture of, let's get it done, and if I don't do it, nobody's going to be able to do this properly.
But that's scary. To me, that would be super scary if there's only one person that can get things done without errors, because it's a nightmare
For
for
sure.
business. Yeah. That's a great segue to risks. Why do we keep on saying it's a nightmare? Or why do we keep on saying it's scary? I think it's clear to us, but maybe we can share with our audience.
Well, it's a first of all, it's an operational risk. Bob leaves, wins $1 million.
Wins the lottery, yay!
Well, I think $1 million probably not enough to retire now. Wins $100
Unfortunately.
million and decides to retire to the Bahamas. What do? How do you run things that nobody else knows how to run? How do you manage 16 spreadsheets, uh, or your whole ERP system that's written in 16 spreadsheets?
You figure it out, but it's going to take you time. It's going to take some mistakes. It's going to take some angry customers potentially that are not being either served, or there's some errors being made. I don't know, on their orders, on their invoicing, you name it. Pricing is another great example, right? Your inventory may be short if that's the ordering system you're dealing with, right? Your employees are frustrated and you're frustrated. And what if the auditors come in that time? That would be amazing, eh?
Absolutely. Wonderful situation. Imagine explaining to your auditors that
Bob left.
Bob left and we cannot provide you the numbers for the next X number of weeks because we don't
Right.
know how things work.
And that can translate into real money, right? It can translate into potential fines or challenges, right? So definitely risky, um, and not a pleasant situation to be in.
Well, we've got also the problem of a bunch of employees working around one person's calendar. It's pretty much one queue. It's almost like, you're building a huge highway
Mhm.
with, um, you know 10 lanes in each direction, and it all boils down or funnels to one single toll booth.
Oh, that would be great.
So there is a sign that says Bob. Um,
Please visit Bob
please
before
visit
entering.
Bob to pay for your to continue. So your whole organization funnels into one person, one source of uh, information, and you cannot move.
You can't. You can't grow. You can't scale. You may not be able to open new locations if that's what you're after, right? Because you only have one Bob. You cannot clone the Bob, at least not yet, or not legally.
By the way, Bobs are awesome. I
Oh,
love
they're
Bobs
wonderful.
because they're
Yes.
usually your top-notch employees that are
Yeah.
the best, absolutely the best.
Yeah. I guess we shouldn't sound like Bob themselves are a bad thing. No, they're really very passionate and capable people that you want to keep happy as well. But it's just not healthy either for your organization or Bobs who cannot take time off.
Well, we had a financial company that had a Bob. It was actually a female Bob, and she got burned out.
Yeah.
So she had to take a leave of absence for 6 months. And at that time, company had to go through a huge change to understand what was actually done there, what was the process, how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
So huge risk. What are some of the warning signs that you have Bob in your organization?
I think we've talked through quite a few of them already, right? So it's if you have a problem and you need to solve it, who do you call for help? If you ask yourself that question and only one name comes to mind, I think you have a Bob, right? Or where people need to wait for somebody to come back and help them with things.
I think we should give our audience maybe a couple of practical checks to see if you have this problem. Well, first of all, ask yourself, put your key employees in your head, and I would ask yourself if what would happen when this specific individual will leave? How much impact of the business is going to be? That would be one.
Another question would can be is how easy it is to train a new person in your organization. How how much time would it take to onboard somebody and get them truly productive within your organization, right? And that would be a good indicator. If it's, I don't know, over half a year, you're definitely in trouble.
Absolutely. And I'll give one more that we see quite often is huge reliance on manual systems versus something like that's integrated, that's industry standard. If you are relying on spreadsheets to run your numbers, that's a pretty good indication that you do have Bobs in your organization that can run those spreadsheets.
Yeah, because they're much harder to learn. They're definitely very unique to your organization as opposed to even the QuickBooks, right? A majority of the small business owners are dealing with QuickBooks. It's a standard software that once you had experience with it, you know your way around and you can find people that are familiar with it already. So you don't have to teach them your particular spreadsheet and the
Absolutely.
formulas within it. So that, yeah, that's definitely a good one.
So this is all wonderful. How do we fix this?
Well, first, let's figure out if we have bulbs. That's step number one. If there is something you need to fix in your organization, if you do, identify them, right? Name the bulb in your organization. There might be multiple depending on the areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's you. Then nominate yourself and be very open with yourself that it is you if that's the case, right? Um, and once you know who they are, really understand what they're trying to do and get them to document and get them to share that knowledge with the organization. One of the great examples I think we had with one of our clients is that whenever a new person was coming to the organization, they the onboarding process was actually to rotate that person across all of the departments in a company so that the person gets the knowledge about the company regardless of the area that the person was starting in. And we thought that was fantastic, right? So same thing, identify people that you can rotate, have the rotations within your organization, yes, and complement that with the documentation.
It would be really good to document processes when you hire new people, especially the ones that have um, ability to ask why questions, your favorite questions. Uh, it's when somebody, a newcomer, asks a why question, that identifies usually the processes that are too complicated or something that's not clear to this person, and it's worth definitely reviewing.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity to review and identify legacy things, inefficiencies, really challenge the status quo of your processes too.
Well, we had a customer that asked us to review uh, call center procedures to find inefficiencies to make sure that all the customer service reps would be most efficient to with their calls and with their daily procedures. So we were reviewing uh, the daily processes as well as the interfaces that they do. And in that call center, there was a big dashboard that HCSR would use, And in the top right corner, there would be a button that would say, do not touch.
Oh, I love those.
So that, but I I was sitting with one CSR and I asked them about the button, and they didn't know what it does. They just told me that I should not really touch that button, otherwise, there is a death penalty associated with that. And I asked the same, and I got pretty much the same response. Third, same. I went to the manager. I'm a curious person. Not as often as you. I do ask the why questions. So I asked the manager. I said, "What does this button do?" And she said, we had a employee that was doing the design of the system, and they put that button in. They just told us not to touch it. It's a very important button. It's there for some reason, but do not touch it. Long story short,
Of course you touched.
of course I
Did
did.
you? Of course you did. You have to.
I did. It's like that pimple that you don't want to scratch all the time. It's very itchy, but you don't want to scratch,
You
and
have to.
everybody says don't scratch, and you will still scratch it. So I pushed the button. Well, actually, I didn't push the button, to be honest. I looked at the code, and all that button does is it pops up the message on the screen saying this is the test. That's all.
And you failed.
Failed.
You pressed the button.
Exactly. There is a death penalty coming my way for pushing that. So that button was sitting on a screen for several years. Nobody knew what it does, and
Yeah.
the button didn't really do anything. I know it's a silly example, but
But
it's a true example, and it was there. And in essence, we removed that button from the screen. And how much productivity does it increase? Not much, but at
nothing.
least it's a little bit of clarity and cleanliness of the interfaces.
No, but it's also in the future when you are about to upgrade that system that you've been working with or potentially replace it with a new system. It saves you time and money because people like us will be asking you questions about that button, trying to migrate the button's functionality and capabilities to the new solution and the new platform, and that will cost you money.
Yes, and sometimes it's a simple button that does nothing, and sometimes there is a significant process behind the button that still does nothing, but it takes time to understand what they are.
Yeah.
So, going back to what we're talking about, I think when you do this, when you start looking at silos of knowledge or the knowledge that resides within the specific people, you start identifying a whole bunch of other um, uh, issues with your systems. And it's great to document it because at the end of the day, it will help in a long run.
Maybe we can call it hygiene for your organization, right? Is just to keeping your processes and your documentation understanding of those processes up to date, which will enable you to keep them somewhat clean and tight and reasonable and efficient. And it will let your people learn, grow, identify the areas for improvement. Maybe we can also cover a little bit about how to document and what to document, because that's an important piece, because nobody likes documentation and everybody sees it as a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make sure that we spend as little time as possible on it, yet getting the value out of documentation?
Well, I think we probably should do the whole topic on documentation. Spend,
Probably. Yay.
um, don't get too excited.
I won't.
uh,
Maybe.
I think it's if we can just give, because documentation scares people, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, where do I start? How do I do it? I think my biggest advice would be focus on getting something on a paper. Try to get it as clear as possible. Don't worry about the format. Don't worry about how it looks. You're more focusing on clarity and substance rather than the visuals, because the visuals can be added later. You can get formatting done later. you just need to get the ideas on a paper.
Yeah, and maybe a good analogy would be to thinking about sketching as opposed to full drawings, the amount of details, right? It needs to be enough so you can understand what that is, but it doesn't need to have all of the details about your processes. But yes, it is a whole separate topic for sure.
Well, we usually focus on decisions, rules, and uh,
Exceptions.
and exceptions.
Exceptions would be
Yes, I
wonderful.
forgot the
Yes.
third one.
But the big ones.
The big
You
ones,
can draw on exceptions too.
100%. So once you capture those, um, you will see that there's a picture that starts forming the sketches, maybe in outlines, which is fine. You can color them later.
Yeah, so definitely document, train, long term, depending on the size of the organization, you can also look into moving to what is called off the shelf systems or established products. QuickBooks is a great example for all the small businesses as opposed to spreadsheets, right? This will standardize your processes and practices and make it easier to transition. So, what do we leave our audience with today?
Well, with the dreaded D word, document, you got to build a culture of transparency and knowledge sharing. And at the end, you have to start with just identifying the problem or the problem areas.
Yes, find Bob's, identify the problem areas, and get yourself ready to scale.
We appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you so much for listening. We're always happy to hear from you. Comment on Bob's in your organization, and if you found this valuable, what other topics would you like us to cover for the technologies in your organizations? Stay in touch, and we'll be talking to you soon.